Natalie's emotional breakthrough. The unexpected journey behind her transformation. The moment Natalie opened up about why she has never felt truly confident, everything shifted, because what looked like a simple cosmetic change turned into one of the most revealing emotional journeys of the entire season. And if you watch closely, you'll notice how every decision she makes is tied to years of pressure, insecurity, and a need to finally feel at peace with herself. Stay with me, because the deeper we go into her reactions and her story, the more it becomes clear that this transformation is not just physical. It's a powerful look into how people rebuild themselves after carrying silent emotional wounds for so long, and I'm genuinely curious what you'll think as these layers unfold. The moment Natalie started talking about reshaping her appearance and how deeply her insecurity has followed her through different stages of her life, I realized that what we see here is not just a cosmetic decision, but a reflection of how someone tries to reclaim control over their identity after feeling judged for so many years. And I wonder how many of you felt that same tension while watching her explain all the things she wishes she could fix. When she described how being called unpleasant names when she was younger affected her self-esteem, it became clear that this situation is rooted not in superficial desires, but in a long history of emotional wounds that many people carry silently. And I think this could spark some interesting reactions from those of you who understand how comments from the past can shape the way a person sees themselves today. The way Natalie told the doctor that she never truly felt beautiful shows how powerful internal narratives can become when they are reinforced by experiences that leave people feeling unseen or misunderstood. And I find myself thinking about how often we let those old narratives rewrite our present decisions without even realizing it. As she stood in front of the doctor, describing her fear and discomfort, I noticed how her voice carried both determination and vulnerability, a combination that reveals someone trying to move forward while still being tied to the pain of what others once told her. And I'd be curious to hear in the comments how you interpret that emotional mix. Her choice to undergo the procedure felt less like a desire to impress others and more like a step toward reconstructing a version of herself that could finally feel confident. And this makes me reflect on how society often pressures individuals into believing they must change something in order to be accepted. The conversation about her nose never being cool might sound simple at first, but when she explains it through the lens of past criticism, it becomes clear that she is trying to break away from a belief imposed on her rather than something she actually thought on her own. And I wonder how many viewers sensed that deeper struggle too. When she revealed that she never wanted to tell her mother about the surgery because she feared the stress it might cause, it highlighted how family expectations and emotional boundaries influence personal decisions more than we admit. And this invites a broader conversation about how we balance privacy with support. Watching her prepare for the surgery showed a blend of anticipation and fear that many people feel when stepping into a moment that could redefine their confidence, and I felt that this was one of those top moments where the emotional story becomes bigger than the physical transformation itself. The way she spoke about wanting a perfect angle reminded me of how people sometimes anchor their self-worth to details that seem small on the surface but carry the weight of unresolved insecurities, and I believe this is something worth reflecting on collectively. As she tried to explain why her appearance never felt aligned with how she wished to present herself, I noticed a quiet frustration that many individuals experience when their inner self-image does not match the reflection they see daily. And I think viewers might relate more deeply than they expect. Her interactions with the doctor were filled with small emotional cues, hesitation, nervous laughter, subtle pauses that showed she wasn't just discussing a procedure but confronting years of discomfort. And I'd like to see what interpretations you all have about those subtle signals. When she decided that keeping parts of her natural features felt beautiful but still wanted adjustments, it demonstrated the conflict between embracing authenticity and chasing an ideal shaped by past criticisms. And this duality is something many experience silently. The story she shared about a childhood injury shaping her insecurity added another layer, showing that physical changes often come with emotional history. And I think this invites us to consider how early experiences continue to influence choices in adulthood. Seeing her mother's reaction afterward, switching between shock and awe, illustrated perfectly how family involvement can either strengthen or destabilize someone's confidence, depending on how emotions are expressed in those key moments. And it would be interesting to know how others interpret that dynamic. The reveal 2 months later, where Natalie appeared genuinely happy with her new appearance, showed a moment of emotional release rather than vanity. And this makes me reflect on how healing sometimes requires symbolic steps forward that allow a person to feel renewed. Her statement about entering a new chapter in life highlighted how transformative experiences often become psychological markers that help people detach from older versions of themselves, and I find that an important topic for deeper discussion. The excitement she expressed when seeing the final result carried a lightness that contrasted with her earlier insecurities, revealing how powerful it can be when someone finally feels aligned with their own reflection, and I think many viewers might resonate with that feeling more than they expect. When Natalie shifted from insecurity to confidence, it became clear that her journey wasn't about seeking perfection, but about trying to establish peace with herself. And this subtle shift is one of the most meaningful elements of her story. The moment she said, "This is my perfect face," wasn't about perfection, but about reclaiming ownership over her identity. And the emotional weight behind that sentence invites all of us to revisit how we define our own sense of worth. As the narrative transitioned to her interactions with friends after the surgery, it was interesting to observe how external validation can soften emotional scars, but never fully replace the internal work required to feel secure. And I wonder if others noticed that too. Her friends' reactions, supportive but cautious, created a contrast between celebration and concern, showing how people close to us try to protect us even when they don't fully understand our decisions, and this dynamic is worth discussing. The scene where she talked about not wanting to involve her mother too early showed a nuanced balance between independence and emotional dependence, a balance many people navigate quietly in their adult lives. When she admitted she didn't want to disappoint anyone, it revealed that her choices were influenced not just by insecurity, but by a fear of letting others down, which adds another psychological layer to her actions. Her emotional explanation of why she needed to make this change portrayed vulnerability in a way that felt honest and relatable, making it easier for viewers to empathize with her rather than judge her. The sense of relief she expressed once everything was done reflected how emotional burdens can lift suddenly when a person finally takes a step they postponed for emotional reasons rather than practical ones. Seeing how she tried to celebrate her transformation while still carrying traces of fear reminded me of how healing is rarely linear, but instead a gradual shift between uncertainty and acceptance. Her excitement about embracing a new version of herself was rooted not in superficiality, but in a genuine desire to feel more comfortable, a sentiment that resonates deeply with anyone who has struggled with self-image. The way she spoke about starting a new life chapter shows how physical changes often symbolize emotional transitions, and this invites a broader exploration of why humans link identity so strongly to appearance. Her final reflections conveyed a mix of hope and determination, suggesting that while insecurities may linger, the decision to confront them can be empowering. The emotional arc she experienced, from self-doubt to cautious confidence, illustrates how complex and layered personal transformation truly is, and I'd love to hear how you think this journey reflects larger themes about self-worth. As Natalie embraced her new look with a mixture of pride and disbelief, it became clear that the transformation was not just external, but deeply internal. And this dual growth is something worth analyzing further. Her willingness to speak openly about past insecurities added a raw honesty to her story, showing that vulnerability can sometimes be the strongest form of confidence. The final moment of her segment, where she expressed hope for a new beginning, felt like a symbolic release from the weight she carried for so long. And I'm curious how many of you felt the same emotional shift while watching her. As Natalie stepped into the days following her procedure, the way she observed even the smallest changes in her expression revealed how closely tied her emotional state was to finally seeing a reflection that didn't trigger old insecurities. And I find this deeply relatable because small details often carry the greatest meaning when someone has been uncomfortable with their appearance for so long. The shift in her tone when she looked at herself in the mirror for the first time showed a quiet relief that words can barely capture, almost as if she was meeting a version of herself she had been waiting for since childhood. And I wonder if viewers sensed that moment of inner peace as strongly as I did. When she discussed how she wanted to step into her future with confidence rather than fear, her voice carried the kind of determination that comes from years of self-doubt finally being challenged. And moments like this tend to spark emotional reactions because they remind people of their own transformative turning points. The way she described her past experiences with emotional criticism illuminated how powerful external voices can be when internal confidence is fragile. And I think many viewers might want to reflect on how those early comments shaped her ongoing struggle with identity. As she explained the relief of being able to move freely without worrying about angles or imperfections, it became clear that the emotional weight she carried influenced not just her self-image, but her behavior in social settings. And this part of her journey invites deeper discussion about how appearance affects everyday life. Her excitement about being able to smile without self-consciousness was revealing because it highlighted how a single feature can become symbolic of an entire emotional narrative. And this makes me wonder how often people underestimate the impact of small physical insecurities on someone's overall confidence. Watching her interact more openly with others after the procedure showed how personal transformation often extends into social transformation, creating a new sense of belonging and connection that wasn't fully accessible before. And I'd be curious to see how you interpret her shift in social energy. The conversations she had with close friends about her reasons for changing her appearance were meaningful because they touched on themes of authenticity, self-worth, and societal expectations, offering viewers a chance to reflect on how often we internalize the opinions of others without realizing it. As she continued to share her thoughts about starting a new chapter, it became obvious that this change was not simply about aesthetics, but about reclaiming control over her emotional narrative. And that psychological shift might be one of the most impactful aspects of her journey. The tenderness in her interactions with family after the reveal suggested that she was searching not just for acceptance, but for reassurance. And I believe this reflects a dynamic that many people experience when balancing independence with the need for emotional support. Her reflections on not wanting to disappoint anyone added a layer of complexity to her transformation, because it revealed how much of her self-esteem has been shaped by trying to meet external expectations. And I think this could encourage viewers to share their own experiences with balancing authenticity and approval. The slight hesitation she expressed when discussing how others might react to her new appearance showed that even positive change can trigger uncertainty, highlighting how growth often brings both empowerment and vulnerability in equal measure. When she talked about finally being able to look at photos of herself without focusing on flaws, it demonstrated how self-perception can evolve dramatically once internal narratives are rewritten. And that part of her story feels especially meaningful for anyone who has struggled with appearance-based anxiety. Watching her embrace joy in small moments, like taking selfies or simply examining her reflection, revealed how transformation sometimes begins with noticing small shifts in mindset. And this makes me wonder which moments viewers found the most emotionally significant. The pride she displayed when describing how much more confident she felt interacting with others suggested that her transformation had already begun reshaping her social identity, creating space for healthier connections and more authentic self-expression. Her willingness to acknowledge both her fears and her excitement showed a level of emotional maturity that feels refreshing. And I believe this balance between uncertainty and hope is what makes her journey so compelling to watch. As she reflected on how far she had come emotionally, it became clear that the procedure acted as a catalyst rather than a solution, encouraging her to confront deeper issues that had been building inside her for years, and I'd love to know whether viewers picked up on that distinction. The relief she felt when realizing she didn't have to hide behind self-conscious habits anymore highlighted how transformative moments often redefine not just appearance, but also posture, voice, and confidence. And this connection between body and mind deserves more discussion. When she spoke about feeling worthy of love and acceptance after the transformation, it illuminated how intertwined self-image and emotional connection can be. And I think this resonates with many people who are learning to redefine their own worth. The shift in her overall energy, lighter, more expressive, more open, suggested that the changes she experienced went far beyond the physical. And I find it fascinating how emotional liberation can appear so visibly once someone begins to let go of old wounds. As she envisioned the life she wanted to build moving forward, her words carried a sincerity that suggested she finally felt aligned with the version of herself she wanted to present to the world. And I wonder which part of her reflection struck viewers most strongly. Her confidence when talking about future relationships and opportunities emphasized how emotional healing can unlock aspirations that once felt out of reach, and this aspect of her journey may inspire others to confront long-held insecurities. The closing moments of her segment, where she embraced her transformation with pride but also humility, created a powerful contrast that reminded me how complex and deeply personal growth truly is. And I'm curious how many viewers connected with that layered emotional shift. Her final thoughts about stepping into a more confident version of herself were filled with quiet determination, revealing that she sees this transformation not as an ending, but as a beginning, and this makes her journey feel both hopeful and grounded. As the segment ended, the emotional arc she completed, from doubt to acceptance, from insecurity to self-recognition, stood out as a reminder that personal transformation is rarely about perfection, but about discovering the courage to feel whole. And I'd love to hear in the comments which moment resonated most with you.